It's podcadzo.
We do have, I would say, Cadzo's The Edge here today, which is Will Benson.
Dude, that's the worst thing you've ever said to me.
That was my name in high school, The Edge.
But for a different reason.
You can be Wedge. Will the Edge. The Wedge.
The Wedge.
The Quedge.
All right, guys.
Hey
Welcome,
guys, I'm the Wedge.
welcome to podcadzo. Illustrious returning founding member of Cadzo and podcadzo by extension, but only making a second appearance. Will the Wedge Benson.
What's up?
We all have a name now. He's Leonard. I'm Sack. Or
No, it
I'm
wasn't
Cuke.
Sack.
Too many one syllable. I'm Cuke though.
Cute.
And now you're Wedge. The Wedge.
Right. Two ingredients of salad. Wedge
So I was
and
thinking
cuke.
too.
Wedge is an ingredient. My favorite. It's yummy.
Yeah. Well, you know, a wedge of lettuce.
Yeah.
A wedge
I
salad,
don't know.
if you will.
I don't understand you right now.
Let's move on. I say we just dive right into the music, guys.
Welcome to Podcadzo.
Welcome. Better late than never is what I like to say. We released the album 3 weeks ago. And we're just putting out our album release special.
Album release special.
So on November 22nd, I think was the day, we put out our debut LP, Mile a Minute Man.
Oh, great record. Excellent album.
And Will finally found the time in his busy schedule to get on Podcadzo so we can do a song-by-song analysis of it, talk about the experience of writing and recording the songs a little bit, and just the album overall. So I say, this might take a minute, so let's just hop right in. Should we do tracks first? Do you want to talk about, anything else around the album first, or do you want to just dive into the music? What do you guys think?
I say we just listen to the songs because, there's not much to say about the tracking of it, really. Kind of just, did it. And
Did it.
I don't even know when he did his tracking. Fucking...
Mm-hmm. Yeah, let's just jump into it.
Word. All right. Well, the first song is Boy on the Outside. Here it is now.
The whole song?
Now, probably only listen to a snippet of each.
This is the intro.
Yep. You're hearing drums now.
And then...
Oh, is that what that is? Oh.
Yeah.
Wait for it.
More drums, actually, here. Nice rocking intro to start off the album.
Should we mention anything about how this compares to the first one?
Yeah, I think we should.
It's different.
Here, we'll just get into the verse real quick and then pause it.
This is about to be the verse coming up right now.
This part is what we call the verse.
Like the intro to the verse.
Intro to the verse. So we'll play more in a second. But yeah, so to Julian's point, this was on the first release we ever did, which was an EP. We've talked about the EP on here before. We don't need to go too much into the background of that. But, Julian and I started working on an EP before the band was even really a band. We just kind of did it as a basement recording project. And then halfway through recording that is when Will joined the band and obviously added a huge element to it. Totally changed the dynamic. I had some bullshit synth parts in these songs at that point, but when we started jamming with you, what you came up with was way better.
Yeah, I remember you gave me some sheet music, and it was very interesting sheet music.
Yeah, I think probably for Boy on the Outside, I was just doubling the guitar. Did I actually give you sheet music?
You did, yeah.
I guess I just transposed the MIDI to
that's what happened. But when you do that, if you don't format it, sometimes it comes out like really fucked up. But I was still able to get it. And I do like the part that you wrote, because I kept most of it even in this our album version.
Yeah.
I like embellished it a little bit. But I liked your part though that you wrote.
Thank you. I'd have to go back and listen to the part. Did you kept parts of my original part?
Yeah,
and your
like
part?
the part with the coming up a little bit later in the song with the piano kind of synth. Like that part was mostly what you had written. I just added a little bit extra, but the part where I get to like the bass synths was like where I wrote my own part for it.
Okay. Yeah, I do not know how to play the piano. I only was, for all these songs, like I said, was basically doubling the guitar. I would painstakingly go through the process of I have my guitar on my lap and then the keyboard in front of me and say, okay, I'm playing this note here, C, D, E, F, and then find that. And that's how I wrote the piano parts originally, or the synth parts. But yeah, so then you joined.
All that work to just be replaced.
Yep. Well, thank God. Thank God. Yeah, so Boy on the Outside was on the EP. I think it was the third track on the original EP. I think the sequencing of that was Dark Park, Masquerade, Boy, Target Market, if I recall. Something like that.
I wanted to ask, because I genuinely don't remember, and I didn't go back and listen. The whole intro thing isn't on the EP one, right?
No.
It just starts right away.
Yeah, we do the bump, 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 right into the verse on the EP. So yeah, this extended intro is something that came about from us just jamming the song in the basement a lot and playing it live. And there was really no question about any of the original EP tracks being on the album. I think as soon as we started talking about doing a full album, we knew that all of those 4 songs would make it on the LP. But I think especially Boy on the Outside was if we were going to cut any from the album, Boy on the Outside would be the last, in my opinion. It just, from playing it live, I think it became one of my favorite songs to play live. It made the most sense with some of the new tracks we were writing. And then it just made as soon as we started talking about the sequencing of the album, we were all on the same page that Boy should open the album.
And I think even before the sequencing talk was really underway, there was always the notion, or at least the idea, that Boy would be the album opener if it was on the record, because it was the song that we always open the set with. It's kind of the most I guess just bird's eye view of what the Podcadzo shit is all about. Doesn't go too specifically into any one concept. Not it's a conceptual record at all, but
yeah, well, no, conceptually, I think it does set of all the songs, it sets the best tone for kind of the motifs that come up on the album.
Definitely.
Which I don't know how much I want to get into that on this episode.
Yeah, I think the beginning of it, because we have a little jam there, but we always do something a little bit different for it. I think that's important to our sound, just because we do a lot of improvisation in our practice sessions and then even on stage.
For sure.
Even the intro that is on the record was fully improvised on my end. I did a different take every single time. We tracked the intro. And
another thing about setting the right tone for the album, I don't know if this is something that would come through to anybody listening to it, but for me and how I kind of approached the feel of the record and mixing it, especially as I wanted to give the feel that someone was in the basement with us, just listening to us jam down here, and that was the experience of listening to the album. So I love the album starting that way with a drum intro. It really feels we're all getting ready to play. You're sitting down at the drums, just warming up with the fill, and then we go right into it. So I think it's a cool way to open the album in that way as well.
Definitely. I also what you did with the mix there, where it was kind of a very roomy kind of tone. You were maybe upstairs, and then you're started walking downstairs.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What I had in mind as I was doing that is kind of adjusting the mics or the mix, while Julian's doing the fill, getting it dialed in. It's all right, dialed in, now let's go. And yeah, so glad you picked up on that.
Yeah.
I think that's
came through.
not to like jump the gun, but I think that's the cool part about the record at large is just that we took the songs and just made them more representative of like what we just like to do when we jam. And that was like a huge thing that the EP tracks, in my opinion, were always kind of missing, was just that kind of like the energy of, is this like a serious track, or like are they approaching this as like a super serious like studio project? And I think that just adding the jams, adding the space, adding like the room to breathe within all the songs makes the record feel more like, just personal to like how we approached making it, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. I don't have. Are there any like specific parts of this song you guys want to listen to beyond this?
Not really.
The only thing I might jump to is the very end with like my vocal outro. This was kind of part of like the thematic thing too.
That's definitely.
Yeah. So I debated like a lot keeping that in, and how that actually happened is I was recording vocals for not to get too much in the recording process, but we tracked the drums down here in the basement where we're recording this podcast right now. Then I would do a new guitar take over that. Once that was done, send it off to Will. Will would, in his own time, record keys. And then once I had Will's key part back from that, that's when I would record vocals. And I usually just did that in my room, like make a little makeshift vocal booth and do it there. And I was recording vocals for Boy on the Outside, and I had my guitar amp mic'd up too on a separate input. And I did a whole like vocal take of the chorus part, without my headphones on or anything, so I couldn't really hear it. And I realized I had the wrong microphone selected for that input. Like I was recording from the mic that was far away on the other side of the room that was on my guitar amp. And then I listened to it and it was that take. And I was like, oh, that actually sounds cool. Like that could, that might fit in as like at the end.
A textural thing.
Yeah. And then like I was wondering like if I should add more stuff like that throughout the album. But, like kind of like, for lack of a better term, like skits between songs or just like, bleeps and bloops, like things like that.
Yeah.
Ultimately decided against that.
We had the conversation of like, should there be transition tracks? Should there be like a dialogue? Should there be any sort of thing that goes in between the songs? And I think ultimately, and not to say that the record's not cohesive or that that we didn't try to make a cohesive record, but like each song is kind of different enough that, bookending one song with a intro and then kind of thematically tying that into the outro, I think that makes really good sense to do like when it is necessary and when it impacts how the song hits. And like that's the intro track, so it kind of just makes it feel like, we kick-started the record by just like opening it up with a jam, and then at the end of the song, you're still riffing, and then that's it. And then the record started.
It's like, okay, we're ready now,
Yeah.
guys. Like, here's the songs. Yeah.
Here's the songs.
And like, for debut LP, some bands can definitely get away with it, but I really don't think you should add too much fluff. Like, it should really be like, here's what we're about. Here's the songs. It's, debut LP. I don't think you've earned enough grace necessarily with your audience to like add too much extra bleeps and bloops and fluff.
Yeah, we did a bunch of transition tracks for the first, or not the first, but the second Blue Taboo release way back in the day, and I always wind up hating them because it's like the song itself is pretty solid, but then you have to listen to 30 seconds of bullshit that, is conceptual, but only if you know what the concept is.
Yeah.
And apart from that, it's just really noise. So yeah, I think for the debut, it's cool that we were able to deliver mostly all songs, very little fluff, and still have it be like a pretty dense record and not with any wasted time necessarily.
Definitely. Yeah. The runtime is 44 minutes, about a little bit under that, which I think
that's a good
respectable.
length.
Yeah. 44 is always a favorite
I
number
hear
of
about
mine
my
too.
length all the time, about how good it is.
I doubt that.
Yeah, it's not
You're
true.
happy to finally hear it. All right. Target market.
I
And-
will say, the album version of this song, like not even the single, but the album version of this song that's on the record itself, is doing pretty good on Spotify right now. It's pulling out early, which I think is cool because I would assume a lot of people only get associated with that song, or it only winds up on playlists as the single version, or not even the original single version, but the version we released like a month ago. But it's like the actual album version of the song that's doing well, which is cool because I think that shows that it's not people necessarily just putting on the record and listening to it from start to finish, or just listening to the first couple tracks. There's like a song that people specifically like.
Yeah, I've noticed that as well. And I think part of that too is just releasing as a single, like an algorithm created some momentum for it. And
Definitely.
It's carried through, which is nice to see. Before we talked after we released the single, not with Will, but you and I did an episode about target market. So I don't think we'll have too much to say, but I really want to hear about Will. Yeah, because like it sucked to not have Will for that episode because all we really wanted to talk about was the key part. Yeah. And like Connor, you met Connor over the pod, I think, one time. Connor has been very complimentary of this song and like especially your key part. So well done, Will.
Again, not to jump the gun about the whole record, but everyone I've showed it to and people who have just checked it out organically, the number one piece of feedback that I get from everybody universally is that the key parts are fucking badass. So I think you low-key sealed the deal on this record.
They were definitely better than what I would have written if we did not have it.
And the songs would have been way
the comments that would have been like, the keys really doubled the guitar. All right, target market. And I just love this as the second track too. Like the transition from kind of the vocal outro of What on the Outside to this hits well, I think.
I kind of said it on our last episode, but like of all the things I'm proud of, I think the sequence is maybe what I'm the most proud of. It feels so organic.
Yeah. So here's the famous key part. So this song was also on the EP, but very different on the EP.
Yeah, and my part was also super different on the EP.
Yeah.
Like this one, it took me a really long time to get my part down. It was like a lot of just, sessions of playing this, experimenting with new stuff, but I kind of got that idea for that little like da-da-da, just come to me one night when I was like at my computer, just kind of also messing around, and it just fits so well. I was surprised that like I hadn't heard it earlier. And because before that I was kind of mostly just like doubling the guitar, but like I don't want to do that. I definitely want to have like my own part. So it took a really long time, but that really stuck. And the other part that I really liked about this track is kind of in like the breakdown section. I have like da 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 da. That part there, I kind of based it off like Strawberry Girls because like they have the same kind of riffs like in their music, and I was like, I could do something like that.
I'll try to play it real quick. Nailed it.
Well, and am I wrong? Or in the EP version of this song, is that rundown just like a straight rundown?
It is slightly different. I did change it for the album version, but I don't entirely know how I sequenced it, but it is more just like a vertical thing where it just goes straight down. But this one, like, it kind of jumps back up.
Goes up, which is I think again another one of those things where it's like. It just seems so obvious. Like it's just it's instantly catchy. Like I'm not to say that I like fucking love Podcadzo or like we're the best band ever, but like that song gets stuck in my head. Like I will be doing random shit and then I'll in my head randomly I'll just be like da 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 da, and it's like, oh fuck, that's a part that Benson wrote.
And it's of course the Podcadzo theme tune.
Of course,
It's in front of every episode.
I really like this track too because this has that like kind of like beach vibe to it, and I never really ever wrote my own music that had kind of like a beach, almost like ska-ish vibe.
Yeah.
And so that was really fun to experiment with that. But it did take me like a really long time. Like for most of my parts I've written, it takes me a long time to do it because I go through like a lot of revisions, and I'm a bit of a perfectionist with my parts. So
For sure. Well, you had, the part that's on the EP, and I don't have the EP version, but here, I'll put part of the EP in here in post, Mark. We're back.
I'm gay.
So I thought, I liked the part on the EP a lot, and I just thought like that was the part. It was cool. And then I remember we were down here jamming one time, and Galloway was playing with us, and you just out of nowhere played that new part, and Galloway and I looked at each other and like we were both like, "What the hell?" It's like super cool.
Yeah, that's the thing that has been interesting for me since I don't typically finalize my parts until like you have the drum already and the guitar parts. I kind of like to have that stuff so that I can play off of those parts.
Yeah.
Because I really like the idea of all of the parts kind of like Baroque music where there's a lot of contrapuntal motion, and there are different parts.
That's a word I know.
Yeah. And there are like different parts that are like doing different things, but it all fits together. And so but this one, like I said, I think it just fits really well, which is why I was surprised that like I hadn't come up with that part earlier.
Yeah. No, for sure. It makes the tune. Yeah, I don't have much more to say on Target Market. Anything else?
I was just going to say, I mean, for whatever it's worth, drum-wise, this song was really like the only one that didn't change that much from EP to album. I added like a couple notes in the kick drum in some spots, but that's really it.
Well, just because the groove makes so much
exactly
sense. Like as soon as you hear the beat, you're like, yeah, that's what's supposed to be there for sure. All right, so we go from that to Masquerade. So I got the first 3 songs on this are EP songs, which I think as we were talking about the sequencing, that's one thing. Although like from the jump, we debated sequencing a little bit, but I feel like we pretty much agreed on the first half.
Masquerade, I do remember Masquerade changing
pretty
drastically.
Yeah, but I feel like kind of
few.
early on we decided, it makes sense as 3.
Well, and also, and not to like say that again that I like don't like the song or whatever, but like Masquerade for me, that was my part was the part I was like the least happy with out of all the songs, and for that reason, and just because I always felt like the EP version kind of like lacked a little bit of energy in some spots where it needed it. It kind of felt like the song, if there was to be a song that didn't make the record, it for me would have been Masquerade.
I felt the same way.
And when we were sequencing, there was a little bit of a moment of like, there's really nowhere to put this song because it just doesn't stand up with any of the other ones. But then something about the recording process and the first couple like really rough bounces of it, like it just completely changed. Like the energy was just there, and I
really think that was just from us playing it enough live that we just figured out like it wasn't like changing parts, and although your key part did change on the pre-chorus, which I love the new part too, but like we didn't change anything about the song too drastically, and like definitely didn't change anything like as we were recording it. I think just like the small intricacies that we figured out from playing it live like translated to the recording, like carried the energy through better.
Drum wise, it was just about leaving like a shitload of space and making sure that the part was more like simplistic, I guess, which I think is the main thing that translated to me in like the recording on the record versus the EP recording. Is just like, I don't know, there was just always a weird energy dip in kind of like a universal point. So I don't know. Yeah, very interesting.
We'll play a little bit of it here. I love that fill.
Thanks.
Yeah.
There's, I think maybe my favorite fill on the record is in this song, which I didn't expect.
I want air around. See
I'll just let it get to the pre-chorus real quick because I want to hear Will's key part on that. So had you played it that way live at all before tracking that part?
No, not really. And then after I tracked it, I totally forgot what I played, so I just made it up over and over again. But I do like that part as well. And when we play it live, I still kind of play what I'm feeling instead. But I do kind of base it off of that part.
Yeah, it's more in that vein.
Yeah.
When we play live.
I had something that was similar, like on the EP, but it was more static, and so I thought for that it'd be cool if I did something that was a little bit more rhythmically interesting. And it took me a long time to come up with that as well, because like it's kind of interesting. Like I usually think about things like from a music theory perspective, but I like never really asked you for the chords or anything, and I don't even think about these songs, like the chords that are happening.
Yeah.
I like totally think just about like the musical line. So that's kind of what I was thinking when I wrote those parts, pretty much all the parts on the album. So yeah, that's kind of how it was. For this track though, when we play it live, I usually take that solo in the middle, but I really, really like
it just opens up. So like on the EP version of that, it gets kind of like more condensed and energetic and like choppy in the pre-chorus, but with your new part, it like creates a lot of spaciousness.
Yeah, and I really like it here on this track.
Yeah, which I think helps carry into the chorus better, because then it like helps, like what we were saying earlier, carry the energy through.
Yeah, definitely. And I think even like when we play it live now, I think we kind of do that as well. Because I noticed like when we were first jamming that song, we would lose a lot of energy like at that section.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, I would always like when we played it at like early shows, I always thought Masquerade went well, but I'd always get pretty nervous before playing that one. Like, would worry about like losing the audience.
I would get nervous because my Ableton session kept crashing specifically on that.
I remember that. They were playing that fucking bowling alley show. I remember we just like played the intro.
My MacBook totally crashed. This is the reason I got a MacBook.
Luckily, that hasn't happened since.
Yeah.
Anything else on Masquerade?
Well, I guess just more as just like a general comment. Oh, fuck. Mazer almost took your iPad off.
That'd have been hilarious. My iPad broke today as well.
I don't know if hilarious is the word for that.
Nothing will surprise me at this point.
It's just impressive how, despite like an infinitely modular instrument, how you always manage to find like exactly the right tone for each section of a song. And like I feel like there's just a lot more finite changes between like sections and on the record versus on the EP. And I feel like Masquerade is a really prominent example of that, just like how refined each specific section is and like how well your tone fits each specific section of that song.
Yeah, I think I think a lot of that too is like thanks to Colin, because like I do give him my parts, but to be honest, I don't do too much processing on them myself, and because I'm thinking like that's something that you could do better. It's just like massage the parts so it fits. Yeah. But usually when I am creating my parts, like I usually pick the sound first, and that takes a while as well. I usually like demo a lot of stuff. I start with like a preset sound, and then I start tweaking that, and sometimes I do that and I don't even like it anymore, so then I'll just like make mine from scratch. But yeah.
No, it's I'm really happy with how Masquerade turned out. I think it's a good third song too, you know, not to keep harping on the sequencing, but it's just funny. I had that thought a lot as I was like listening to test mixes. I was like, I wasn't even sure if Masquerade was going to be on this, and like we really want to put it like the third song when people are like still developing an opinion on the album. Yeah. And I'm happy it's there.
I think it fits perfectly and gives the record like the slight energy dip that you would almost expect. I like the third waypoint of the record, but it's not like a bummer song. It's not a sleeper song. There's still energy behind it. Yeah. And it's I think in a lot of ways it's a good like precursor to like the Dark Park part of the record, where it's like kind of mysterious and a little bit like soundscapey more than like rocky.
Yeah.
But like, I don't know. I just think, again, the sequence is really good. It's really hard to sequence a record, and I feel like it deserves a little bit of credit how well it wound up being sequenced.
Real quick, I'll just play the bridge part. So you get the idea of just like to your point, sonically, instrumentally, that's the most out there we get with the album. That's really the only time it strays from guitar, synth, bass, drums.
I like that a lot, though. Like,
yeah,
I would really like to go more in that direction, maybe for some future stuff.
Definitely. Yeah, and that was part on the EP. That was just like something. One day I was messing around with a new plugin and dragged a bunch of samples in and came up with that and like stuck it in the bridge.
And it's like one of the few. Is it the only part that's like pretty much just same as EP?
Well, my guitar on this is same as EP for this, but yeah, that's the only actual like stem I just dragged from the EP into this one.
Right.
Everything else was re-recorded. So yeah, that's the only one. I think probably on the whole album, that's the only thing from the EP that I just dragged directly in. All right. Next is French 75. So, pretty severe energy shift going from Masquerade to that one, which I think works well. It's the only explicit song on the album. I'll mention that.
I did think that was a little weird. I thought there was explicit words on other tracks.
I was surprised when, as I was like typing out lyrics, I was like, oh yeah, I guess this is the only song I swear on. And there's 2 swear words in there. I won't mention them. I hate singing them enough. I would hate to say those words on the pod. I'll let the listener.
You wrote those
listen
words.
To it. I wrote them.
You sick
I wrote
little...
them once in a notebook. I put them on record, and then I had to write them again on a lyrics page. It's the worst 3 moments of my life.
Sorry, you had to go through that.
I had to make sacrifices for the song. So French 75 was also something we previously released as like a B-side to a different single. But it became a core Podcadzo song. One of my favorites to play live.
Yeah, same with me too. I actually started out like not liking the song that much just because I didn't know what my part would be. And I tried a lot of things with it, but I came up with something. Like that first part on the verse, I kind of play something a little bit different live, but then on the chorus part, I really like that part a lot. I think that one gels really well, and I have a lot of fun playing this song live now. Yeah,
I always look forward to it, and like from a songwriting perspective, I'm proud of this one. Like I think all the parts work together well. I'm like, it's very basic in terms of its structure and in terms of the chords I use, but I think like it just is a cool way to put chords together in this one, and it was just a different way of approaching songwriting for me that like I hadn't done before, but it worked well for this song. And like writing it came together so quickly, like initially so quickly that I didn't think it would be a real song until we started jamming it, and I was like, oh, I guess it is a song. And yeah, that's really all I have to say on French 75.
I think the only thing I would add from my drummer's perspective is just that kind of like what Benson said, honestly, I didn't like this song for a bit when we were first jamming it because I did not know what to do with my part. And this song was kind of like the classic instance, I think, set the trend for, the record at large. When I tracked it for the record itself, was like, simplify when you don't know what to do, because for a long time jamming it, like, and even playing it live, there was a lot of me trying to like overdo things and oppose you guys and just be like a nuisance rhythmically speaking. And I think in the long run,
you still enjoy being a nuisance sometimes.
Other songs being like straightforward and just linear with it, and again reminding ourselves, not even saying that we had the sequence decided, but just reminding ourselves that the song had to be a balancing point on the record, essentially, and that was an important thing. Hey, Cypress. Sorry, he's eating something.
Cypher, behave.
Yeah, I really like your drum part on like the bridge sections where you're like da 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 da. I like how some of the hits that you do line up with ours, and then other times you're like playing like a different division of the beat, especially at the end.
Yeah.
It always pumps me up because I love how like I don't entirely know how we're gonna get back together again, but like it always ends up that way.
I agree. Yeah, like when the snare hit lines up finally, you like really feel like, oh, nice.
Yeah,
like, it's great.
I think that was kind of the intention, so I'm glad that it worked.
Definitely did.
Hey, quit eating stuff off the ground, you fucking dipshit.
So we are now at the end of on the last track of side A, which is Larimer Street. So if there were, I don't know if you guys think this, I guess we did decide this because on the sequencing board over there we drew a line after Larimer Street. So if we were ever to do a physical vinyl release of this, I think
assuming
Larimer
that we can
Street,
get all of this tracks on the B side of the record.
Yeah, true. But that's a pretty
Mile a Minute Man is like 7 minutes long.
Yeah. Anyways,
We'll have to look into that.
we'll look at So yeah, Larimer Street is the last song of side one. And what is there to say about Larimer Street that hasn't been said already? It's international super hit.
I guess just because of the fact that it did so well as a single, this was the song I was the most scared about redeeming the record. Like making sure that the record version was justified. Like making sure that we didn't take a step backwards.
Which
that was my only thing with it.
I was nervous about too, and then at some point I relinquished that, and it was like, you know what? If it's better than the single version, then that's a win, and if it's worse, then we look punk rock. Like, hey guys, that really good single that we had that everyone likes who listens to it. We did a shitty version of the album. There you go. But no, I like. So you didn't retrack.
Yeah, this is like one of the only few songs where I didn't change my part at all, and it was partly also because of that. I was like, this did so well, like I don't want to change my part really.
Yeah.
So I didn't.
Well, my first thought was like that Larimer Street was kind of like the first single released from the album, 9 months before the album came out, and that we just put the exact single version on the album. But I'm really glad we didn't, and that was Julian's idea. He said, "No, I want to retract my drums on it."
Yeah, no, I love this album version the most. And I really like your vocals on it too.
Oh, thank you.
It works really well, and I think I love this song too because since this is like a really kind of bluesy song, I get to have a lot of time to improv, I guess, on it. So I like to change my part around live. I feel like that's a fun thing
in the background while we're talking.
Yeah.
Well, and I think again, just as another side tangent, I'm glad retrospectively that you didn't change your part, because when I retracked drums, this is one of the only songs where I took a key scratch and I tracked my drums along with your key part, and I think there's moments where the parts line up really well.
And everything else on the album, all the drum mixes, I tried to make sound as similar as possible, as if it was one continuous drum take. I used the same presets on each song, listened song to song, I was like, all right, do the drums sound similar enough on the song? You know, I did like subtle changes and like added some effects like every once in a while where it made sense. But on this song, Julian said, I want my drums to sound kind of crazy. Wildly different. So I don't know if you guys noticed this, but your drums are mono on this one, totally mono.
Yeah. When I was doing my listen throughs in Japan, actually, I thought that I was actually hallucinating, and I decided not to text you, but I almost did. I was like, are my drums in mono for this track?
Yeah.
But it works because what I wanted was like vintage, punchy, dark sound as opposed to like the modern, really like flappy tom sound, and this song has that. And we also used completely different drums for this track, and I used cymbals, a bunch of cymbals that I don't use for any of the other tracks too.
Yeah. And we were just like a lot more lax with miking them. I think I mostly used just the room mics on this mix and stuff. And so, yeah, it's very different from like a miking technique as well. But I remember setting this aside for a while because I was kind of overwhelmed to come to it and mix the drums and like get the sounds that you envisioned. And then I finally built up the courage to do it one day and then had this mix within like 10 to 15 minutes. And I was like, no way could that actually be
That's amazing.
good. It's probably really shitty. I set it aside for another like week or so and then came back to it. I was like, this might actually be good enough. And
it worked out really well. I think my favorite thing about like the process of drum tracking or just tracking in general, making a record, is finding subtle ways to try to like do things completely differently. And I feel like this song, for me as a drummer, is like a good example of that. Like completely reutilizing the setup, changing the tone of and the performance, the goal of the performance behind the song, like completely. And the EP version just didn't get there. Like the performance was just too similar to all the other performances, and there's not enough like swagger. And I think changing the tone, reapproaching the setup, and then having just like a more lax approach to the track like gave it that swagger, and it like actually has like a swing now that it didn't.
Well,
really have before.
I love the single version still. Like I'm really glad we have both. I think it's cool that
it's really
people
cool
can enjoy both songs.
Yeah,
and it was a good sign to me as I was working on this one. Julia like overheard me listening to it, and she was like, what did you do to Larimer Street? I was like, oh wow, I didn't think you'd actually be able to tell that it was different, but she could, and liked both versions. So I was like, all right, I guess we're on the right track here.
Yeah. And with this one too, I think this also is a little bit defining for our sound, at least for me, because I started using a lot more organ on
for sure.
tracks after this one. I feel like
side 2 is a little more organ heavy.
Yeah. And I feel like organ works really well for our sound.
It does. I remember playing this for a friend, and the organ kicked in, and was like, oh, thank God, rock organ. I haven't heard like rock organ in so long.
It's true. Yeah, there is not that much rock organ out there. And so this like for any like organ part I do, like there's this one track from Snarky Puppy where Sean Martin is playing the organ, like R.I.P. But like I loved his part so much, and he always did these things where like he'd play these chords, but he just like runs. He just mashed the keys, and I loved that like so much. Loose. So I do that all the time too. For sure. Like on this track, I just love mashing the keys.
Yeah. No, we did it without it being like a 60s rock pastiche thing. You know?
It still feels like a modern idea.
Yeah.
It's just got like that swagger of the older like bluesier rock.
Definitely. And this is like pretty much a blues song without really sounding like one, without being obvious a blues song, which thank God, because we don't need more blues rock songs out there. All right, so we're now into side 2, and it kicks off with another classic, Dark Park.
This one's probably my favorite one to play live.
Yeah. This one, I also get nervous playing live, knowing I won't be able to count with you on the drum show.
This is the one where, Julian is always trying to fuck us up.
It was another instance for the record, though, of ultimately just simplifying, making it groovy and fun and easy rather than being like, oh, let's throw in a bunch of polyrhythms here. Because originally, on the EP version even, part of the goal was like, I want this to sound fucking weird.
Yeah.
But kind of ditched that overall for this song.
And
at least for the recording. The live version, there's no rules.
yeah. This isn't like on the EP songs. This is the song that I got the most feedback on and that people seem to like the most. So as we were doing this one, like I was thinking, okay, we got to keep it similar to the EP, and then we just, from playing it live and just from knowing more about the song and listening to the mixes, changed it quite a bit from the EP version. And yeah, I'm happy with how it turned out on the album.
Yeah, I'm really glad that it is more of like a bookended idea that we don't try to like recapitulate necessarily at any other points on the record, because it makes it feel way more like a unique moment. And again, the theoretical opening of side 2 being this song, I think really sets like a pretty, not like dramatic, but a pretty like slightly over the top tone for what the second half of the record is.
And back to the sequence, like probably my favorite transition in this whole thing is going from the outro in Larimer Street to Will's intro
It's,
on
like,
Dark
so
Park.
sick.
It's sick. And yeah, like it's Dark Park was how we opened the EP because that's such a cool part to open anything with. And so, although no audiences will really ever hear it this way, I'm glad we at least like in our own heads are starting a side of the album off with that intro.
Totally.
Yeah, and actually that starting part, that was the part that you wrote.
Yeah.
It was interesting though, because when you wrote it, it starts on beat 1 for you, but I always felt it like an upbeat.
On that beat.
Yeah, and so whenever I play it, I always play on the upbeat because I like cannot even hear this thing starting on beat 1.
Oh, yeah.
Like I literally is like I have like a mind block. So I was like and a 1 and just like that.
Is that why the intro is sometimes slightly
Yeah,
staggered when we play it live?
Pretty much. Like I
never knew
literally,
that.
I just like it feels wrong to start it on B1. Like it has to be upbeat. So
Yeah.
that's why.
Does me starting on my beat 1 fuck you up?
No, because then I just start like counting
Okay.
with you for it. But yeah, so that's just one thing that like was interesting to me because like that's something I would have never written because like it'd be impossible for me to write that because I never would have heard
That's
it that
really
way.
funny. That's really funny.
This song is also why bongos are in all of the Kadzo songs, because when we originally started this project, we had just left another project and I had bought the bongos for that project, and I was like, well, I'm not just going to let these sit in the corner and collect dust, so I added them to the kit. Dark Park was the first song we jammed, and almost like naturally, immediately, the bongos became involved with like the verse groove, and I can't really imagine again like that verse without that bongo hit. And yeah, so that's why the bongos are in all of the other songs too.
That's something I meant to bring up on French 75 actually in the intro, the bongo hits. I love that because it's creates like a feeling of tension almost as bongo, like any
it's
other
like you want it to be a
band,
snare
it would be
hit
a
so
massive
badly.
snare hit.
You want it to be a snare hit so badly,
Yeah.
but it's a tiny little
It's
bongo.
a tiny bongo, but it makes it heavier in a weird way because it creates like a tension, like I was saying. And then when the snare hit does come in on the last measure before going to the verse,
Yeah.
it's a nice release. So anyways, all right. So now we're every song up to this point in the album had been music we had released previously, had played live previously, which I have no shame about. But we're now getting into 2 songs that no one had ever heard, or that we had never released until the album. And I really think of them as kind of a pair of songs, sort of 2 in the box.
And they always kind of were.
They were, yeah. Like anytime we played one, we had to play the other.
I was confused about like the titles of them because I was like,
And we also
We
didn't
had-
name them for the longest time, which didn't help.
Yeah, I think the first time I actually put a name to it was when I sent you guys like the first rough mix. I was like, all right, we got to call it something. Here's what we're going to call it. And part of that, so the first song is called What Trevor Knows, and the second song is called Guinevere of the New Year. And Go ahead.
I just wanted to say, at some point within your story here, can you tell us what Trevor Knows is about? Because obviously, since these are new songs, we haven't mentioned them on the podcast before.
Yeah.
And I think that the lyrics in What Trevor Knows and just the meaning behind that song is one of my favorite and like the most hilarious on the record.
Right on. Here, let's just play it. I'll play a little. So we have this fun intro, kind of a jam thing here, which I'm really happy with how it turned out on the record. It was always fun to play live, but I was unsure about it, like recording it.
Almost unfair to call it a jam because it's literally like
it's the most regimented.
It's just noise,
but it's not a jam either because there's no improv to this. We're so regimented about how we play this. It is so easy for me to make a mistake.
I have to play
this.
it the same, otherwise we won't end together. And I also did not know what to do for that part, and I again said, I'm just gonna do Tom's.
Yeah, no, it's wonderful. This one had the most mystery too about what Will's keys were going to sound like.
This was like these two songs. It was like the hardest thing for me to come up with parts for these.
But when the keys hit on the beginning of this song, it's like one of the most huge moments of the record.
So I'll pause it there. Lyrically, I guess this is probably the only song I would want to talk about the lyrical content of. Trevor is an amalgamation of several people I know, one of which was sadly a friend of mine who passed away. And he was a really cool dude, an out there character. He's not really he was the inspiration first off for this song. And I'll say, this is one of the only songs I ever created where I actually was like, I'm going to write about something personal in my life. Like almost everything else, I'm just coming up with words that fit the song. And, once I come up with words enough, I'm like, it's not totally random. There's a meaning and structure to it. I'm not just saying random shit. But this was one of the, like how most songwriters write something personal in my life. And this was really the only song I approached that way. But so I kind of made Trevor an amalgamation of several fringe characters I know and people who, for lack of a better term, like maybe conspiracy theorist vibes. So the first lyric is, a bird in the hand is worth two birds in the bush, a fact that we all know. The government is ran by the Rothschilds, a fact that Trevor knows. And I just kind of liked that, like, starting off with such a benign, like, cliche, a bird in the hands worth two birds in the bush, but people don't even know what that means anymore. But I liked saying that, like, and it fit well with the melody. And I thought it was funny to be like, yeah, that's something we all know. It's a fact we all know. But the government being ran by the Rothschilds, that's something that Trevor knows. And Trevor definitely knows it.
And he's better than you for knowing it.
Yeah. So here, I'll play it from there. So going into the second part of the verses, there ain't no bushes and there ain't no birds to sing a tune. So the idea of that was like, well, what does that cliche that we all know, what does it even mean? Like, for me and my friends, where are the birds? Where are the bushes? Like, that doesn't apply to my life. So maybe Trevor's onto something. Maybe what Trevor knows means something. Like, we're just being fed these cliches. Like, what does it actually mean? So the second part of that is, so what does it matter what we say or what we think or what we do? It's like, if this cliche that's been said for the dawn of time doesn't actually mean anything to us, what does anything mean? Like, what does it matter what we say or what we think or what we do? So it's kind of like adopting the view of Trevor. Like, maybe, like I said, maybe Trevor's onto something. Like, maybe the government is rampant. Maybe that's what we should be focusing on, because what the hell else does anything else mean? Like, what does it matter what we actually say or what we think or what we do? So this is the chorus part, kind of.
My mental block was on the chorus of this song. I could not fucking play it forever.
Yeah.
I don't even think I played it right on the record.
No, like, yeah, it's a tricky part to play. Fast moving, there's that boom, 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 boom
That's
at the
the part.
end. That's the part. Which I think you were always too hard on yourself for that one, because as soon as we started jamming that, your part felt totally fine. But
I just couldn't play it good.
Yeah.
It was just
that's just one that took all of
there.
us time to dial in. So yeah, the chorus lyrically, it's like a call and response sort of thing. So it's there's like they're bringing us down in one ear, and then on the other side, it's like I kind of imagined it, even though it's just me yelling, it's kind of like a chorus of people yelling. That's what Trevor knows. So it's they're bringing us down. That's what Trevor knows. Who's wearing the crown? It shows what we all know. It's making him frown. It's all that Trevor knows. We will never know the things that make the world around us spin. That's right. Yeah. So again, just kind of changing perspectives to like Trevor, and I think that's kind of at the point where like I introduced the fact that Trevor's actually unwell, and like that this worldview is affecting him. Because like that line of like, oh, it's making him frown. It's all that Trevor knows. We won't ever know what this means, what makes the world around us spin. So yeah, the second verse is kind of along that same line.
I like how you also elongate the phrase too, with like kind of each repetition as well.
No, thank you. Yeah, I was happy with how that turned out. And this is one that I had, like, as we were jamming in the basement, had ideas popping in my head for lyrics, but this is one I just kind of had to sit down with once we had it all tracked out and figure it out. Any other lyrical? Does that answer your question about lyrics?
Thanks for,
the line I struggled with actually on this is at the end of the second verse. It's about like the fictional character of Trevor passing away. I don't know if you ever, like, the last line is, so what does it matter if you used a gun or a knife or a blade? It's like kind of like a, taking that for what does it matter what we say or think or do? Nothing matters. My friend Trevor's gone. What does it matter how he died? What does it matter what he did?
Yeah.
Kind of carrying that motif forward. And
it's a real fucking bummer.
Yeah. And I wrote that, and it like felt good to sing, and it fit in the song. But I really had to like, do I actually want to talk about that in like a podcadzo song? Sure. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But it made it on the album.
I mean, most people that don't listen to this episode will never know.
Yeah.
So it'll just be a song to them, and
that's
have
what I hope.
Double meaning for you.
That's what I hope. Yeah, for sure. All right. So next in the pair of the two new songs is Guinevere of the New Year. Let's play a part of this.
I like that title though, by the way.
Thank you. This was the song I had the most trouble writing lyrics for. I probably went through like 100 different drafts of lyrics, and I'll talk about the lyrics a little bit more in a second. So this might be my favorite song on the album.
Wow.
Yeah. I never expected it to come together this well. I never expected Will's key part to be such a fucking banger.
Well, this was an interesting one because usually I don't even do my part until maybe like it's more complete, and like I see I listen to your vocal part because I like to, like I said, I really like to complement the vocals a lot with my parts, but we like both independently like reached like the same, I don't know, kind of vibe. Cause like I sent this to you, I hadn't heard the vocal part and you hadn't heard my key part, but you put them together and they just like lined up perfectly.
It was incredible. You sent me that. I was so excited to hear your key part. And I had just, at that point, just kind of decided on that part for the verse, and I was happy with it. Heard your key part, and upon first listen, I was like, oh no, I'm gonna have to rewrite the verse. Like, I love Will's key part, but it's not working together at all. And then it was like literally just a matter of like mixing it a little bit, and I was like, whoa, no, it actually works. This is a banger. This is great. Yeah, your key part, it kind of reminds me of like early aughts, 2000s electronic bangers like M83 or in that vein with that like real synth leady sound. And yeah. It's the only time we kind of enter that vibe in the album. And it works really well.
And I think the reason I picked like a synth lead is because like I hadn't had the vocal one, so I was like, well, how about I try like being the kind of like maybe the main like melodic line for this one. But it works out really well.
Yeah, it works really well for sure. So lyrically, like I was the most lyrically ambitious with this song, just in terms of like words and rhymes and melodies. And I struggled with it for a long time, but happy with how it turned out. So the meaning, the story of this song is like, it's again like kind of approaching or like taking the perspective of this boy on the outside character, and how he might behave in a relationship and like act clingy or something. So like he has a person that he is into who is not loyal to him, or he doesn't think they're loyal to him. And Guinevere is a historical character who was the wife of King Arthur, who was unfaithful to King Arthur with Lancelot, or with one of the Knights of the Round Table. I don't know if it was Lancelot. And I just started coming up with that rhyming scheme of like, for some reason the chandelier was crystal clear, popped in my head like right away as I was playing that part. I was like, oh, I could say on the clear rhyme. And I was like, what's the name that rhymes with clear? Guinevere. Oh, Guinevere is like this unfaithful person that actually like could work. So I started to structure the song around that. Yeah. And Guinevere of the New Year, part of it was just like this party that they're at. I guess it's a New Year's party, and that's the rhyme of it. And part of it is too is like, oh, we're like also, the new year, like signifying change or, a new era in life or something. So that's Guinevere of the New Year.
Yeah. And it's probably my also top 3 tracks as well.
The like synth outro with the 2 guitar hits. I'll play I set when we were doing revision notes, it bummed me out for this reason alone that my revisions didn't send. Because my only note for this song was that the synth outro at the end made me ridiculously horny.
You did send that through eventually. It made me really happy.
It's like probably it's just like a couple seconds, but it's probably my favorite couple seconds of the whole record. It's just like the way that the song ends, and then that is like, it's like a coattail, like a wisp in the wind at the end of it, but it's just like, it's the perfect way to wrap up that whole song, and it's just like, it gives me so much energy when I hear it. I'm just like, holy fuck, that's so cool.
It's kind of whimsical. It's like a nice little tag as well, and I figured the part out too, like before the show, so I could finally play it live. I realized that you like that doesn't start like on beat 1 for it. So like I had to, like when I was going back listening to it, I didn't realize that for the first few times, and I realized I was like, oh, so let me just start on beat 1, see if it lines up, and it did. So then I finally knew how to actually play that one live.
The most satisfying part of the album release show for me was when we nailed that live without ever actually doing it.
You guys couldn't see me because I was behind you, but I was like, what?
Yeah. That whole song, I didn't know how that song was gonna go live, and then we played the song pretty well live, and then nailed that last part. I was like,
it was like
all right,
a soft...
I'm not gonna ask for anything else in the show. Thank you. Yeah,
it was like a soft album release party type deal. So, my goal was I want to play my parts as close to as they are on the record, with the obvious like Dark Park intro being fucky, like whatever. All my parts were like really close to how I tracked them on the record when we played that show. And so having that be like another thing that we pulled from the record that we added to the set, like after the fact, it just felt really cool. Like we really did the damn thing.
Yeah. Here, I'll play the outro part real quick.
No, you won't.
That was in fact the intro part.
So good.
Yeah, that was a happy accident. That because the outro was just sounding awkward on the ending, and so I just like again I was like, hey, this might work. Cut your synth lead part in half, dragged it to the end. I had that double hit guitar thing on that. I was like, where would the two notes line up? I'll just try dragging it here. Made a little crossfade out, and I was like, that works.
Yeah.
There we go. But that was I was like, poor Will. He's gonna have to figure out like where I chopped this in half. I don't know. I don't know where I did. I don't know how to describe it. All right. So the next two tracks are Cowboy and Strange at First. Not. You guys say whatever you want about this. I don't know if I have too much more to say about it. These are songs we've released previously and talked about on the pod. Yeah, and they're songs. Songs I'm proud of. And Cowboy was one.
Cowboy was the only track that I did not retrack.
Yeah, true.
It's the original drums.
Original drums.
Mhm.
That's right.
I also didn't change my part.
You didn't
on
change
this
your part.
song
Yeah,
either.
we largely kept Cowboy the same. I redid vocals and a lot of guitar parts, but a lot of guitar I kept in from the single version.
I think it's worth noting, like, what you were saying about, I forget what song you were mentioning earlier, but you were really proud of how one of the songs came together and you weren't necessarily expecting it to come together as well as it did.
Yeah, Trevor.
This song, even almost retrospectively, I didn't realize how well it was put together until the record came out, like, because the single's not too terribly different from the record version other than, you know, it's reproduced, there's new guitar, there's other parts that are slightly different, vocal parts are different, but like the structuring of this song and the way that all the parts kind of flow, and even the way that the chorus is kind of broken down into, like, you know, there's like sub chorus A, sub chorus B, and then like it all ties together. I think I think in a lot of ways, Cowboy as the single set the vision for me as like what I wanted to do for the rest of the record. And that's why the drums didn't change, because it was a lot of like, how do I get the rest of my drum parts up to that Cowboy or Sweetheart standard? So I think that song really was like my North Star for most of this record when it came to like writing parts and retracking.
When we did the single, it was the first time I was actually happy with a drum sound I got as an engineer, as a mixing engineer. And yeah, I think that's why we wanted to keep the drums the same too. It's like, got it right the first time. And yeah, works well. The only thing I'll add about Cowboy, here, let me play the intro real quick. I spent a whole day on those church bells, and no one said a goddamn thing about that. I had to find the perfect church bell sound, drag it in, spent so much time figuring out how to tune them and pitch them so they'd be a little bit. It was a big process.
Well, it wasn't something that I didn't notice. I just didn't say anything. When we were doing revisions for the record, I think I kind of said something along the lines of like, you know, Cowboy's 85% good. I just want a little bit more snare to make it kind of sound more like the rest of the tracks.
Uh-huh.
And then what you sent back was like a completely different mix in like every way.
Yeah, I think Cowboy and French actually are the two songs I did the most mixed revisions on. And like before I even sent you guys mixes of those, I'd probably gone through like 10 mixes of each. And so yeah, it took a while. Strange at First. It's in it. You retract drums
rock
from
song.
the single version. Yeah,
Mhm.
This is the most rockinest rock song on the album.
I think one thing, again, not to be repetitive, but simplifying was a big thing for drums on the album version of this, because
Play it in the background.
the record version, the I guess single version was more oriented towards just like shredding as hard as possible and being like as loud and rocky as we could for me. And then in a lot of ways, the record version is more like refined and more stripped back. And there's a lot of moments where there are like not necessarily energy dips, but just like pure sonic dips where there's just not like a full wall of sound happening. And I think that wound up complementing the song in a lot of ways and making it feel more like, again, a song that has groove and rhythm and isn't just like loud and brash for the sake of being loud and brash.
This one did well as a single too, and it's one like it's really nice that this happened. Like a couple people just randomly on the internet have like DM'd us saying, I heard your song Strange at First, like I really liked it, which means a lot. It's surprising that Strange at First is the one that has happened to.
That's what we were saying when it originally started blowing up, was like this song is the least like Podcadzo.
Yeah. Which maybe is a bad sign. But no, it's great. But it's not that I really ever had doubts about putting this on the album, but that probably entered my mind a little bit. Like, does it work on the album?
Almost in like a sequencing way, rather than like it was like I always wanted the song to be on the record, but it was kind of like where the fuck do we put it? Yeah.
And it was a happy accident that it worked really well after Cowboy Sweetheart, because this is kind of the anti-Cowboy Sweetheart song,
right?
In a way, like lyrically and kind of like songwriting wise too. But yeah, and it makes a lot of sense as like a second to last track. So.
And also a lot of cowboy references in both songs,
exactly.
which I think accidentally made them tie into each other really well. And then the only other thing I really want to say about Strange at First is like, this is another one that has a tendency to change a lot, like from how we recorded it versus how we play it live. And I think this is a good example again of like how playing it live a bunch of times helped us figure out what we wanted it to be. Because rather than just being like a riff heavy rock song, it kind of wound up being more of like, a little bit of a loosey-goosey, you don't necessarily know what's going to come next type of, again, just like super groovy song. So
indeed.
Yeah, and for this one, like I've really struggled with coming for a part with this one, just because I felt like, just like between you two, the sound of it was so full already. I like wasn't sure what I could add to it.
No, your key part is so tasteful.
Well, I'm glad you like it. I feel like I didn't really change my part for this album, but I feel like it's not even until recently that I've felt even more like comfortable playing it. Like at our live show, like our last one, I didn't even use piano anymore. I used organ patch because I thought that sounded pretty good, and I really actually like that sound a lot. Like if we ever re-recorded this one, I would probably switch it with organ
Reassemble
instead.
edition.
Yeah. So, but like that's just me getting comfortable with this one, because like this track also I felt like totally out of my element playing this, because like I never really like played like a super riff heavy kind of like hard rock track before, especially like as a piano player.
Yeah, no doubt. It's your key part is just like a really nice texture on top, and for your tone on the album, I just added like a ton of distortion and found that fit into the mix pretty well. And I much prefer the album version to the single version of this song now.
100%. Yeah, I think again, like what the the single version of this song lacks is the dynamic and the energy that we just didn't have as an outfit.
It was still a new song then. And we were still not.
We hadn't
like, been playing together that long,
but we were still figuring out like exactly what I think to do. And also like, I think of Strange at First and I think of Larimer Street in the same way a lot, where it's like, ooh.
I wish to mention we do have a live audience for this, and this is probably the worst episode to have a live audience for, because a lot of it is just us listening to music that you guys can't hear.
They have been incredibly bored this
entire
time.
Sorry, we should have given you a headphone mix. Thanks for sitting through this. I feel your guys' energy, and it's helping me out a lot.
I told you we need people to be here. They just never want to stay. So yeah, Larimer Street and Strange at First I kind of put in like the same box of like, really when we were jamming them and they were infantile, like I really did not like them because I did not know where they were gonna go. It was just like they kind of just felt like open-ended jams that didn't really have a purpose. And I think in retrospect, like now that this is on the record and it's retracked and everything, this song has like the most drive and the most intention of like any of the songs. Like your vocals are like so like fearless throughout this entire performance on this record, and like same with the guitar. And even like even though the keys are like pretty subtle or like more textural and less like melodically driving, they still feed into the energy in a way where it's like, okay, now each of these people like know specifically what to do, what each song needs.
Yeah.
And the pivot point of like, yeah, being like lustful and longing and kind of like sad boy and cowboy into immediately the
I do love that
Strange
part.
at First is like, this dude's badass. Like, this dude doesn't give no fucks.
I imagined it was Jim Carrey putting on the mask, going from cowboy to Strange at First there. Yeah, that was kind of the vibe shift. Because we were writing and playing Larimer Street and Strange at First. I had a lot of confidence that Larimer Street was going to turn out to be something good, but Strange at First, I was like, we'll probably ditch this at some point when we can't figure out how to play it. Like, because it was an ambitious song to like play as like, you know, like we said, like a relatively new band.
Yeah, and also like the breakdown section, like that took a long time for us to, I think, really groove with each other.
Yeah,
find our groove, and now I like when we play it live, I'm most excited about that part because like I don't know what you're gonna play, but whatever it is, it's gonna be like fucking sick.
Well, and like, I think we almost, I could be misremembering this, but it almost felt like we took turns trying to decide like who that part should belong to. Like there was drum solos, there was key solos, there was all these different ideas, and then it ultimately wound up just being like, well, just put nothing there. It's just bass and drums, and
right.
It's like, yeah, I think the only moment on the record that's really like that refined, that stripped back, and it's a very
with the drum
unique
break.
moment that came purely out of just jamming and being like, well, fuck, nothing else works.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it was like, oh, we have to do something like different, amazing here. How about actually the exact opposite of that? How about we just stop playing?
Yeah.
And it works well. All right. So we're now to the last track and the title track, Mile a Minute Man.
This one is probably my favorite.
Thank you. I think I mentioned to you guys that as I was working on this one, like mixing it, I was like, all right, this is gonna have to be cut. Like, I don't know what to do. I couldn't come up with lyrics. The lyrics I came up with, I couldn't sing and make sound good. And then this was the most just like, I don't like when songs have to come together this way. I like when they come together organically and easily. And when I find that when I have to kind of mash things too much, I don't like how they turn out. And this is one of the first times it was like, okay, actually, I did just, you know, we did put enough work into this for it to be something good. So
Yeah, I feel like whenever I write music, I always have to struggle at it. So
yeah,
it's like never easy for me.
There's a certain amount of struggle, but like with Trevor and Guinevere, even though I struggled like just with coming up with lyrics on those, it was like as soon as we had the parts figured out, it felt good. But I don't know about you guys, but Mile a Minute Man was always just one I was nervous about and unsure about.
This is, I might be misremembering, but this is probably the only song where the very first thing that I came up with, like the very first groove that I came up with was the groove that's on the record.
Yeah.
Like, I knew, I don't know why, something about just the swagger of the guitar lick, like, I knew, like, how I felt about Larimer Street. I just knew this was going to be a big song. Like, the approach that was taken from the beginning, I feel like, with it was just so different from the approach that we took with all the other songs, where, like, all the other songs were, like, a bunch of jamming and, like, we don't know what we're going to do here, try everything. And this song, even though, you know, you say you have, like, doubt, or you had the doubts behind the song, like, it felt like as soon as we started working it out together in the room, like, it was just it was done already. Like, the transitions were instantaneous. The halftime grooves and the halftime feel in the choruses, like the bell ringing with the guitar harmonic, like all of that was like first practice that all happened.
Well, what gave me enough hope and momentum to like finish, like, yeah, it always felt good when we were playing it down here, and just I was singing the verses at that point, but didn't really have parts written for the pre-chorus or the chorus, and yeah, it felt good enough, and it was fun to jam. But like as we started recording it and working on it, I was unsure. But when Will sent me the key part for what I'm about to play, and when that was able to give me structure for the lyrics, that's when I was like, okay, there is something to this. We have to figure it out and care for it. And here, I'll go back just a second. Taking off, walking on, rambling down, smoking and drinking and speaking in lights of tea. You never had a point of view. Some people want to tell you what it's about. So if they had it figured out, I'll never walk away from you. So I just loved Will's key part there so much, and as soon as I heard it, that melody popped in my head.
And I think that there's a lot of this song to me is really interesting because it's like the most, in a lot of ways, in my opinion, it's like the most different from the other songs, apart from maybe Strangers First being more rocking than the rest of the songs. Like there's a clear, I think, shift in songwriting mentality that's obvious, where it's like, as opposed to, you know, guitar-based music with vocals, it's like this song is, it's like it's a synth song with some guitar in it, and then vocals are like the texture. Like it's a very like synth carrying the melody as like the lead idea kind of song, and there's just not a lot of that on the record. And I think that the way that the vocals fold into that and are playing along with the synth but behind it, there's just like so much, like, what comes across to me is like profound maturity behind the way that the song came out because of the way that all the parts interact. Like it went from a group of, you know, we kind of know how we're gonna loosely interact with each other, to like, no, like this is a group that's locked in, like we're in sync, you know?
Yeah
I really like that part that you came up with as well. I like your lyric choices for that too.
Oh, thanks.
It kind of feels like someone who's just like moving through life without purpose, and like the kind of like da 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 da. It's kind of like a cyclical thing.
Yeah.
Where like they're just like going through
like,
the same
stumbling.
Yeah, like going through like the same
walking.
motions over and over again. I thought that was really cool. And my favorite part about this song, honestly, is when we all hit the E power chord at the same time. It feels so good. And like even like really early on when we were doing it, every time we got there, I'd always go like da 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 da, and like I always kept that part because I just like really loved the way that you know, like moved into it.
Yeah.
But yeah, with this song, I think like the very first time when you like brought it in and we had jammed on it, I had this part that, as I remember, it was so good, but I cannot remember what I played. And so like, it's like one of these things where it's like, I wish I could have remembered what I played, because from what I remember, like it sounded so good, and I have no idea what it was.
Yeah, we jammed this one mindlessly so many times. Like I had the same. There was a lot of like little flares I did. It was like, I'm never gonna play that again, but it sounded good. I wish I would remember that. Yeah.
For this one though, I felt like that was the best I ever played. It was the very first time.
Yeah.
After that, it was just me like trying to recreate it like that Tenacious D song.
Yeah, this is the best. It's a tribute. Yeah.
That's interesting though, because it was again like a similar thing to when I started coming up with drums for. It was like the first thing I came up with was the best one.
Yeah.
Which only really happened on this track, because all the other tracks, it's like I felt like I struggled a fair bit to come up with something that was complementary to the song that I also would want to play, like, you know, forever.
Just 2 more remarks on this song. It's the only song where I'm just playing cowboy chords or like bar chords, power chords the whole time. I don't do any of my noodly, jangly, single string stuff. Except I've like add those like little harmonic flares. But yeah, it's one of the only songs where like you could just play the whole thing on an acoustic guitar really easily. It's just cowboy chords.
Yeah.
And second, I'm really proud of this song because I never thought a 7.5 minute Kadzo song would be on an album, and this song does not feel like 7.5 minutes to me
I
when
was
you listen
surprised,
to it.
Yeah.
like, because the outro happens, and it's kind of like, it's almost like a bookend for the record. I would almost say it's like a good invitation to start the record over again. If you
Yeah.
listen to it on a loop. Fuck, what was I gonna say?
7.5 minutes long.
I had to check and make sure that the outro wasn't like a minute long. It's only like 20 seconds long.
Yeah.
Like the song is actually 7 minutes long,
I'll
which
play
it
the
doesn't feel
outro
like
real
that when we're playing it either.
Yeah. No, it definitely doesn't.
I think this song's cool too because it's like, at points it's, I think, the most gentle song on the record, and at other points I think it's the heaviest song on the record.
Oh yeah, it's like the B section of it, like it's like huge. I don't know, like however you mixed it.
Yeah, that was another like just happy. It was a rough mix, and I was just kind of moving levels, dragging things around, and then it went to the chorus. I was like, wow, that sounds really massive, like wall of sound type
It's, like,
stuff.
downright
It was just,
heavy.
Yeah.
And I think like that my synth part for that was like through a revision, because you were like, I think you should strip it back a little bit and just like do something simpler, and I think that works really well. Just like this like big fat synth line that's just like reinforcing the guitar and the bass.
Yeah, it carries it for sure.
I did 2 guitar takes on the chorus and hard pan them left and right, and then your synth is just right down the middle, and I just did some like bass boost on it, and yeah, that created that big sound. But it was, the easiest like mixing technique I could come up with, and it worked well. The outro for that was all of the songs sequenced backwards in reverse, gradually speeding up. So like it ends with, or the first thing you hear in the outro is the beginning of Mile a Minute Man, played in reverse, speeds up, and then I layer in every song in reverse order, and it's all backwards, and that's how that effect at the end was created. So.
And if you listen to it on a loop, it literally does start and end perfectly.
Yeah, and I wanted to end with the same feedback you hear at the start of Boy on the Outside.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can listen to it on a loop, and it just repeats forever perfectly. Just like that same Vincent song.
Yeah. Or the inspiration was Lazaretto, Jack White.
Oh,
how it
that's
ends
cool.
on the-
I was thinking like Nonagon Infinity, because that one also like loops perfectly.
Yeah, works for that too. All right, guys. Well, we went longer than we said we would. Still want to jam? We set up our instruments. We might as well play a couple songs.
Yeah, why not?
Let's do it.
Yeah, whatever.
This was fun. Thanks, Will Wedge, for being here.
Thanks to
for
Wedge.
having me.
Wedge. Yeah. You're literally welcome anytime.
Of course,
because
yeah.
you are
There's
part of this.
There's a lot of stuff I want to talk to you guys about. Like, I think we talked about like doing an episode, like with talking about artists that have like 100,000 listeners on Spotify.
Yeah.
I have a lot of stuff to say about that, because that's like I almost exclusively
your world.
listen to like really obscure shit.
And you always present them to me as a band I should know. Like, fucking whatever the fuck. And I'm like, no, look them up on Spotify. It's because they have 200 monthly
10,000
listeners,
monthly
Will.
listeners.
Yeah. But yeah, it'd be a fun episode. We got to talk movie and video game soundtracks.
Oh,
with you, too.
definitely that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think we got to do a Snarky Puppy episode at some point.
Snarky Puppy.
That'd be great.
Perhaps another King Giz episode too, because
We didn't really. I do
We didn't
not
scratch
remember
his-
the
I
King
don't
Giz
remember
episode
either.
at all. Really,
I feel like I was super, super awkward during the episode.
I think we got to do
you were
like.
fantastic. Don't worry.
I don't remember it. We got to do like we got to do a Giz series,
Yeah.
like 4 parts that are all Giz, and we just do like 2 or 3 albums per. Or
That's what I need to actually
alternatively,
get well acquainted enough with Giz, is a deep dive like that.
well, in my opinion, like you don't really need to know all of it. You just start in like 2017 and go from there. So
Okay.
maybe I don't know.
That's
We could
doable.
each take like 3 albums.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do like a book report.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, right on. Well, thanks everybody for listening. Thank you, Tomas. Thank you, Kelsey. Appreciate you being
Tomas,
here.
are you awake, bro?
Tomas, future podcadzo.
Tomas will be on
Guest
next
too.
week.
Look forward to that. Yeah. All right, everyone. Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.
Peace.